Dr. Riam Kanso is a pioneering scientist entrepreneur and is a recognized leader in deep tech innovation, dedicated to transforming breakthrough research into real-world impact. She's also the founder and CEO of Conception X and has built a groundbreaking platform that allows PhD scientists to launch startups in fields such as AI, quantum computing, biotech, and sustainability. She holds a DPhil in neuroscience from Oxford, and her career has spanned academia, industry, and venture. She will be giving a presentation later, but it would be great to hear about your experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Cool. I would like you to ignore the title of my talk because it actually implies to people who are not scientists as well. So in case you're not doing a science DPhil, it's also applicable. So can I just ask, how many of you are interested in entrepreneurship? That's really cool. It's very good. Right, so ignore my slides. I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my story because it also follows a very non-conventional path. And then I'm just going to go through my slides, which are a bit more about Conception X. I'm going to be doing one of the workshops later on for people who are actually interested in exploring entrepreneurship and venture, so we can see what it means. And it also applies to non-scientists. Right, so I grew up in Beirut and I came to Oxford in 2008. This is 17 years ago. The world looked very different than it did now. I did the MSc in neuroscience, which for any of you who knows, like an extremely tough MSc. Like I didn't know what was going to happen. I'd never actually spent time in a lab before, and it was a neuroscience MSc. So there was a lot of learning to do. And then I got, I fell in love with Oxford for that year. And when I got, like the Clarendon Scholarship was life-changing, right? Like I got that, and then I got to do a DPhil, and I decided to stay and do a bit of an unconventional DPhil. It was a DPhil in social neuroscience. So basically I was co-supervised by a neuroscientist and a social psychologist. And I was actually doing some very crazy experiments back then, which had to do with looking at dynamics between people and how attention, et cetera, is deployed when two people are interacting with each other. To be perfectly honest, I struggled in my PhD because I probably like a year in, I decided that I'm probably not cut out to be an academic, right? I came here and I said, I'm going to become a neuroscience professor and, live in, here and like teach people. And I just couldn't handle it. And, some of you might experience this and some of you might feel differently about things. I was a little bit annoyed by how publications work, how long it took to publish. My brain is a little bit more like fast gratification. It's a curse sometimes it's good. So I was sitting one summer in the lab and everybody seemed to be having a great time except me. So my supervisor, one of them, the mean one, was actually turned out to have my interest more, sent me this article about, so let me tell you, in 2009, you could still do internships for free. It's illegal now. So there was free labor everywhere. The Royal Society in London was doing an internship, and they were asking for neuroscientists because they were working on like a policy document on neuroscience and the law. So basically, like if someone has a brain tumor and then they kill someone, are they guilty or not? So there was like some policy research about that. I'm like, great, sounds interesting. So I started commuting to Oxford, to London from Oxford every day to do this free internship. I was the first one in the office, despite the fact that people live there. And coming to London, I thought, okay, I probably belong here a little bit more. So I did that 3 months of, I thought policy was weird. Sorry for anyone who's interested in like doing policy. I didn't know exactly what they were doing. And I thought that probably a fast-paced career is something a little bit more interesting. So I actually came back to Oxford and I finished my DPhil in 2.5 years rather than 3, because you can do some, if you don't want to become an academic, you can project manage your PhD to finish on time, to be honest, because you just need to finish. And you do great. And sorry, probably that's not very encouraging, but you can if you want to. You can finish it fast. And then I got my first job in London in the Center for Computational Science at University College London, because they were doing projects with the pharma industry and with the oil and gas sector. And that was also a weird job, but I needed to be sponsored because I was an overseas student, and sometimes you don't have that much choice. And they were looking for a neuroscientist who spoke Arabic. So I applied, and I was the only applicant, so I had to be sponsored for that job. And anyway, so that's like the kind of side of the story. Things then got much more exciting because when I moved to University College London, I actually discovered the world of entrepreneurship and venture. Because actually, when I was doing my PhD here in 2008, 9, 10, I actually didn't know that as a scientist, you can like launch companies based on your research. Like maybe vaguely, I knew in the back of my head that people do that stuff, but like the startup world, ventures that are based on science, I had no idea that that world existed, and it's a huge sector, right? Like entrepreneurship, venture capitalism, all of that. So 8 years ago, I started an organization called ConceptionX, which is what I'll be telling you about today. ConceptionX is currently the largest, let me see. Yeah, we run the UK and Europe's largest deep tech program for PhDs. And sorry, for those of you who don't know that, you probably do. Deep technology is any new or cutting edge technology, right? So it spans things like, new materials, new types of drug discovery, therapeutics, all of those things. And usually deep technology companies have strong intellectual property at the core. Usually it comes from a research lab. And usually deep tech companies take a long time to build because they are risky, right? Because you need to build them, you need to take them out, they need private funding, all of those things. But basically, because the world is changing so quickly, I think it's very important for people doing PhDs to think a little bit more about what they can do during their degrees to maximize their chances afterwards. For some of you, it might be a linear path where you kind of study, write papers, and then become an academic. You can follow a pathway like the previous one. But actually, doing a PhD, whether you're a scientist or an engineer or any type of degree, it's actually a great time to think about starting your company. Like if you want to become a founder, and if you want to launch any type of company based on your research, it's a great time to start thinking about that. Because if you think about it, sure, you're very busy and you have 3 to 4 years being supervised by supervisors, probably quite demanding, and you have to write papers. But you're also in a position where you can start experimenting with this because you do have access to research labs, to equipment, you have access to mentors, you have a very strong ecosystem, and you can actually start thinking about that time to launch a company. And this is what ConceptionX does. It started off by being a very strange idea. So I was sitting in University College London where I was working on several commercialization projects, and there are some PhDs there in the computer science department who are writing code. And we thought, what, like, why should they stop their PhD to like launch a business? This is a very kind of Silicon Valley story, right? Where you kind of stop your degree to launch a business. Not everybody can do that. Can we design a program for them to actually start working on their companies during their PhD rather than afterwards? Because like most companies fail, but at least if you fail, you're still within the comfort of your PhD environment, right? You haven't put your career at risk and you haven't stopped working. This is 8 years ago, and now 8 years in, we run the largest program specifically for PhDs who want to launch companies. We've worked across 70 universities. Oxford is one of them, Cambridge as well. Like we work with both universities to recruit PhD students. ConceptionX is a nonprofit itself. I'm going to tell you a bit more about that. And we don't take any equity in the startup. And if that's a vague concept, usually programs that help companies want a share of these companies, we don't do that, right? Like it stays with the person who's built it. It's done purely for the acceleration of scientific breakthroughs. So basically, I can send you these slides afterwards, but the idea is that, if you're doing a science PhD, and you think that maybe afterwards you want to become an entrepreneur, we can recruit and work with you during your PhD to explore if that is an option for you, whether you're good at it. So the first part of it was in like an education program, followed by more specialized work to actually help you get your venture off the ground. So the idea is that if you're good at it and if you have the aptitude for it and if it's you want to do, by the time you finish your PhD, you have a company lined up to go afterwards without having to do those risky years after the PhD to like think about working on it and building it, which is an exceptionally popular thing with PhD students, and especially for people of diverse backgrounds and women who actually need to have a decision to make. Like, let's face it, not all of us have the ability to like quit our job and experiment on like building a company for 2 years to see if it gets off the ground, especially for things that require labs and equipment and access to, you know, computing resources and anything. And this is across science and technology and any type of company. So this pathway has opened the doors for people who wouldn't be able to try companies to do it because it involves a story that, you know, is more familiar to how we think about our careers and work. And the nice thing is that if it doesn't work, people are still in their PhDs and you're still getting your degrees. It counts as a lot of experience learning about commercialization, and you just end up having like a very strong MBA type thing afterwards. So this is, I don't feel like reading them. You can send them later. But like, these are our numbers. So 475 teams were trained, where a team is at least one PhD. Sometimes people band up. This has led to 150 new deep tech companies that wouldn't have existed otherwise through this methodology. They've raised over £1 million in private funding, and now the portfolio itself, people, is valued at over £500 million. These are in the space, these are good numbers. Sorry, like for some, like this is venture, so they count as good. These are some of our companies. So you can, Infinitopes is an Oxford company. They were, I'm just gonna like, you know, this is the portfolio, but I'm just gonna like, just pause a minute on Infinitopes. And Infinitopes are a company working on cancer vaccines. And there are 3 founders, and they did this during their PhD. The point is that if they hadn't done Conception X and hadn't built companies, my bet was that they would do the PhD, 2 of them would become professors, and 1 would work for Pfizer, and this company wouldn't exist. Because like, well, what do you do? Like, after your PhD, you have to make a decision. And now Infinitopes has raised £18 million in like investment, and they're doing quite well. So yeah, this is the funnel. An exit is a good thing. It means that the company was either, you know, on the stock market or exited, but we can talk about those in the workshop if you want. And these are our sectors that we work in. So it spans quite a lot of things. People who are not scientists have sometimes banded with other people in like the Conception X space to be co-founders with them and build companies. And in the workshop later on, I'm going to talk about what transferable skills as kind of scientists you have that will enable you to build companies. And yeah, we also like the academic. So this is not just, you know, I'm showing you the slide of our academic advisory board to show that this is not an initiative that takes people away from academia. Like, this is not a way to take you away from research to build ventures, because these super senior academics are very much on board with this, because for universities now, and like the way things are changing and the world is moving, and with the advent of AI, universities are also having to step up to do what universities should do, which is to accelerate knowledge and, you know, spread good things in the world and make, you know, the planet healthier, make people healthier. So it is actually, you know, a bunch of people uniting together to work on this, because it's going to be even more important going on. Like, I don't know if in 8 years' time, scientific publication, the way we see it with how AI is going to be a relevant format anymore, to be honest, because things are just moving very quickly. So I think using this time, as previous speakers have hinted, to think about what you do during your PhD is going to become even more and more important. And that's it. Thank you.
Well, thanks so much, Dr. Riam, and the questions at the end. Next.